Trump or Kamala?
Brother, they're all in bed together. It's all a show. It's not real. It's a scam. All of it. Left side, right side of the same fucking coin. Left wing, right wing of the same motherfucking bird.
So we don't really have freedom of choice, do we? We can choose between either being forced to do what we don't want to do under fascism or choosing to participate willingly and live in some comfort under global capitalism.
And the human herd has already embraced this completely.
We're going to talk about all the ways in which we're conditioned to believe we're free and all of the ways we're subconsciously blocked from our freedom. Let's get into it.
Freedom is a scam. It's a free world. It's a free country. You're free to do what you want. Bullshit! As soon as you're born, you're jabbed dozens of times without your consent. And then you're signed away to the government via a birth certificate and given a number. Freedom! You don't have the choice whether or not you want to go to the educational indoctrination system, aka school. If you don't, your parents will get in trouble, fined or worse. Freedom! And if you want any kind of prosperity in this system, you have to pursue predetermined jobs by studying predetermined subjects and learning about predetermined theories. Freedom! You would then get a job which will determine what time you need to go to sleep, what time you need to wake up, what time you get to yourself. In fact, if you want to do anything in between the 8 to 12 hours you're working, you will need to get permission. Freedom! They own all the land, airspace and sea space. So if you want to move or travel anywhere, you have to get the permission first. If you want a roof over your head, you have to do it via the system. You need to get a mortgage or start paying rent in a predetermined location and a predetermined house. Even though there's all this empty land everywhere. Freedom! You sit down and watch your TV and you are force-fed with their agendas and propagandas. Any independent news outlets or journalists are quickly and swiftly cancelled. Say anything that goes against their narrative and you will soon find yourself shadow banned at best and at worst in jail. Just take a look at good old Charlie Boy's recent coronation. All the peaceful protesters were arrested. Freedom! Freedom is an illusion in the new world. Look man, they own everything that you need to survive. The water, the food, heating, electricity, the land. And if they could, they'd probably tax you on the air that you breathe. Just think about it. They're rolling in these 15-minute cities, which will restrict how far you can travel outside your zone. And then they're rolling in electric cars, which can be programmed to stop outside the 15-minute zone. And then you got the electronic money, CBDC, which can also be programmed to not allow you to spend money outside your 15-minute zone. One of the definitions of a prisoner is someone who is or who feels confined or trapped by a situation. And I'm guessing that's 99% of you watching this right now. So next time you're humming along to George Michael, Freedom, I won't let you down. Don't forget that.
Where's the lie? We like to believe that in America we're free because we can do what we want without consequence, as long as it's within a certain boundary. But how free are we really? In what context are we referring to freedom? Because if we're talking about being able to scroll social media all day, yes, we're free to do that. But we can't just hop on a plane and travel to a different country. We can't even walk around a public park after a certain hour because we are reliant on the system. We are controlled by the system. Our physical freedom is just an illusion. There's only one place we can really be free. We'll get to that in a second.
Anyone who has raised or taught children should know that sometimes kids can be difficult. They can be very stubborn and they won't do the thing you need them to do. For instance, you need to leave the house and they won't put on their shoes. You can dictate that they put on shoes and you can force them to put on shoes. But what you're doing is creating a dictatorial relationship between you and your kid, and they're going to rebel against you. That's just human nature. When we're dictated at, we rebel against. We need to have reasons, we need to have choice, we need to have autonomy. So you have to give this child the illusion of autonomy while still leading to the destination you need them to go. So you give them a false choice. Well, you can choose the Spider-Man shoes or you can choose the Iron Man shoes. Which do you pick? They're going to pick one of the two, completely forgetting that there's other options. For instance, not wearing shoes. What you've done is manufactured consent among your child. You've controlled their direction, giving them a false choice that preserves their autonomy, their perceived autonomy, while still controlling their overall direction. And we as adults in America experience this every day. It's ironic that in America, the beacon of freedom, our citizens are not really that free to do what we want to do at any given moment. If I surveyed most people watching this video, I'd say most of you say, I'm against child slavery. I think that's a pretty common feeling. The reality is most people don't have a choice but to participate in forced or child labor because of the way that global capitalism works. In order to be viable in the employment market, you need to have a smartphone or some sort of interface into the internet, be it a laptop or computer. Most computers are made with raw materials that are sourced from places that use forced or child labor, gold mining, cobalt mining. You can choose to opt out and not use a digital device, but by doing so, you're condemning yourself to poverty or a significant difficulty in being able to attain the bare necessities of survival. So your choice as levied by the system is either participate in a system that uses slavery, including child slavery, or be essentially excommunicated from society and possibly die of starvation, unhoused, unclothed, poor. Now, arguably, an individual could choose that, but why sacrifice oneself when you didn't really have a choice to begin with? Of course, we have the choice to dismantle a system that uses slavery and put in something that works for us, but we don't know how. We don't have the means to produce for ourselves, and we don't have the tools to learn how to seize the means of production from the people that hoard it now. Because the people that hoard the wealth are the people that also benefit from making our textbooks, our curriculum, and teaching our children. And they're not going to teach our children the tools to dismantle global capitalism if it's going to hurt their profit line. It's antithetical for them to do so. So we don't really have freedom of choice, do we? We can choose between either being forced to do what we don't want to do under fascism or choosing to participate willingly and live in some comfort under global capitalism.
What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, Amanda Haynes. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit that like button. And if you're guided to, go ahead and subscribe if you like the vibe and would like to join the tribe. I like how he said manufactured consent. We haven't really been given free choice, have we? Not unless it's at the detriment of our well-being. So we can choose to not work in the system. We can choose to forego comforts and become homeless. But it's not really a choice, is it? It's almost like we're strong-armed into participating in the system. Now, I don't exactly know, like he said, how a system would function outside of the way it does now. I just don't have those answers. But I know the way that it's moving is very much modern-day slavery. And he's right. We are essentially walking contradictions. So many of us are against pollution, and yet we still drive cars that contribute to polluting the earth. We still purchase plastic cups knowing they're not biodegradable while simultaneously wanting to save the planet. We still buy phones and electronics and even clothes that are manufactured in factories that are run off of child labor. And we know these things, but it's like they're so far removed from our everyday life that morally it doesn't really bother us, does it? But ultimately, we're reliant on the system. We need the system. And that is why in this physical existence, we are not free. Now, this is only referring to our external world, our outside world. We haven't even begun to cover our inner world.
Freedom is the right to decide for yourself.
What are you mumbling over there? Are you even aware of the time in which you find yourself? Because today's freedom is the possibility of clicking on thousands of channels, thickly
Doing stuff that you're not going to get punished for, and that's all.
and the human herd has already embraced this completely.
You cannot possibly imagine how insanely much payola we shelled out to guarantee this idea would take hold.
As creepy as that video was, it was true. The herd society has been completely conditioned to believe we're free because we can walk outside of our door at any point in time. But lest I remind you what it was like when COVID was popping. Y'all remember that mandatory curfew where you had to have paperwork to be out at a certain point in time in a certain area? The lockdowns that were happening globally, being forced to close down your business. And what about protests? What about peaceful protests? We aren't free to have those, are we? And what about property taxes? So you're saying that if I own a home, I don't own the land that it sits on, because if I pay off my mortgage, if I buy the home cash and it's completely mine, if I fail to keep up with my property taxes, the house can be taken away from me. My house could get sold off at a lien auction. All I'm saying is there's some aspects of the system that don't make it seem like we're very free at all. Let's keep going.
Trump or Kamala?
Brother, they're all in bed together. It's all a show. It's not real. It's a scam. All of it. Left side, right side of the same fucking coin. Left wing, right wing of the same motherfucking bird. There's a story about Mr. Jones, and Mr. Jones is having trouble in his plantation because the slaves are acting up. They're not performing. So Mr. Jones goes and asks his buddies, his fellow plantation owners, what's the solution to get more out of my slaves? And he says, you need to go and get a hold of Mr. Smith. So Mr. Jones goes and inquires with Mr. Smith, and Mr. Smith says, don't worry, tomorrow at first hour, just call all the slaves and I will personally talk to them. The next morning rolls around. Mr. Jones calls all the slaves and it says, ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce to you Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith stands up and says, from here on out, you are free men. You can do as you please. You can go wherever you want. You can eat whatever you want. But understand one thing. As soon as you leave this plantation, things out there will be dangerous. There will be terrorists, plagues. Maybe some other slave master will pick you up and toss you into their slave system. But you are free to go. Or you can be part of this democracy that we're about to create. And we can all work together and own the plantation. And everybody cheers, yes, yes. And we will see you guys tomorrow at the same time you came in today when you were slaves. The moral of the story is that we believe we're free up until we break free from the illusion. So you can either operate under the premise of what every NPC does, or you can just say, I'm going to be a free man and I'm going to figure it out.
NPC, doesn't that mean non-playable character? Interesting. So basically, moral of the story is those slaves were controlled by fear. Ultimately, that's what's happening here in America. And you hear so many people saying, you need to vote. That is how we maintain a democracy. That's how we maintain our freedom. But the thing is freedom that's contingent upon voting isn't really freedom, is it? It's not freedom when we're backed into a corner. That corner being voting for opponents that are running against one another. Freedom doesn't come from the outside. Yes, we're free to go live off grid and grow our own food. Why aren't we learning about growing food in school? We don't learn about any of the loopholes to get out of the system from the system. Of course, why would they teach us this? People really have been strong-armed into being reliant on the system. There's a way to get out of it. Let's get into it.
Only independent people can get to real freedom. If you're dependent, how could you possibly be free? Which is why I'm not a big fan of systems that make people dependent. As an example, you know how many people get on welfare and never get off it?
It's interesting because the entire system is built on the premise that people never get off of it. It's not just welfare, it's indentured servitude through the bankruptcy-free college loans. It's the property taxes. It's the cell phone bills. It's the grocery stores. It's income taxes. If you have to feed the system that you're trying to become independent of, is it really independence? Or is it that you've worked your way up so high that you've created some sort of leverage that keeps you from experiencing rock bottom? Also, I think it's time that we define what freedom actually is.
I believe that most people don't actually want to be free. Why? Because freedom requires full self-responsibility, which means giving up being a victim. And most of us love being a victim. There's a perverse power in it. We get to indulge our resentment and bitterness. We get to feel superior. And then we get together with friends and bond over how fucked up everything is, how life is unfair. And if only those bad people over there would stop or go away, everything would be just wonderful. It's a fantasy, a trap. It's a prison. Not happy with your life? That's on you, because you cannot change the world. You can only change yourself and how you relate to the world. Yes, humans can be cruel. You will be betrayed, cheated, have your heart broken. There's no way out of that. But if you accept it and are willing to feel the pain of it, you're free.
This is freedom. Freedom is, no matter your circumstances, maintaining your inner peace. That is something no one can take away from you. Freedom is intrinsic. It is part of the nature of who we are. We were created as free beings before we incarnated in these physical bodies. And so in this 3D reality, it is very much set up in a codependent nature. But we don't necessarily have to depend on the system in a codependent way internally. We have the freedom over our inner world. We are the supreme authority over our inner being. And like he said, as fucked up as as the world is, we don't have to let it destroy our inner peace. And that's the real work. It's not voting. It's not building an off-grid system and growing your own food, which isn't a terrible idea. It's about coming to know who you are. It's about getting in touch with your true nature. It's about transcending this physical reality to experience peace and joy and love. And none of that has anything to do with what's happening on the outside. Let's keep going.
Okay, I want to tell you real quick what freedom is. Freedom cannot be fought for. Freedom cannot be bought. Freedom comes through self-realization, the realization of yourself, the infinite part of you. You become free when you realize that all you had to do was simply be who you are. That's it. You don't have to be what society says. You don't have to be what your religion says. You don't have to be what your government says. You don't have to be what your parents. You just have to be who you were. And as you embark on this journey of figuring out who you are, then you'll start to find your freedom.
You know, it's interesting because part of me predicts that the system, the outside world, will end up crumbling to the point that we're forced to go inside, that we'll be forced to sit with ourselves. This is just my prediction on like evolution. But yeah, self-realization. Who am I? Who am I? Where did I come from? Where do these thoughts that I think come from? What type of being am I? If we're spiritual beings having a human experience, what is a spiritual being? Who am I as a spiritual being? I'm very familiar with this physical self. I'm familiar with my name and my identity and my ego and all of these things that I identify with in this 3D reality. But if we're not humans, we're spiritual beings, who is that? What an exploration. And how do I find that out? Well, you can start by checking out my video, How to Calm the Chaotic Mind, where I delve into the topic of meditation that ultimately leads to self-realization. Let's keep going.
Freedom needs to be earned, but it also needs to be maintained. Naval Ravikant famously said, people that live beyond their means do not experience peace. Then he says, people that live below their means will experience a level of peace that those above their means will never experience. So freedom can be experienced, you don't have to be making a ton of money. So my objective was freedom, right? And I achieved that by sleeping $200 a month on a couch to then focus what? My time, energy, and attention to making more money. But a lot of motherfuckers live beyond their means. Their time and energy and focus is what? Spent on paying their bills. They're in a relationship that's toxic, that is not supporting their endeavors and their goals. So they spend their time, energy, and attention supplying that person. Their friends, right? They're not good friends. So they spend their time, energy, and attention with people that are not ROI positive. And their daily actions and their habits, right? They spend their time, energy, and attention on those things that yield no results. I had good relationships, good friendships, good networking, good habits, and I lived below my means so that I could focus my time, energy, and attention making money.
Y'all want to know something funny that I just noticed? Time, energy, and attention. The acronym is TEA. Get it? T. Anywho, living above your means keeps you trapped, keeps you enslaved. The cars, the homes, the clothes, the trips. Having no idea how to get out makes sense when you spend more than you make. And you might say, but I can afford my bills. I can afford my car note every month. But can you afford to quit your job? What will happen to your car? And the thing is our economy is leveraged on debt. Not only our country's debt, if that exists, but the debt of its inhabitants, from credit cards to mortgages to college degrees. We can't afford peace. So live beneath your means and you can explore. Get to a place where the material things don't matter as much, if at all, which allows you to buy back your time, energy, and attention, your tea. And from there, who knows what? Who knows what you would do if you didn't have to work to pay your bills, or if you didn't have to work as much to pay your bills? bills. And this is just on the outer freedom tip, which is probably an illusion. But let's focus a little more on our inner freedom.
To be honest, everybody thinks freedom is the ability to have money to do whatever you want, or the ability to go wherever you want, or I'm free. No, freedom is here. It's a lock, and the key is in your hand. You are the only one that can unlock that lock in your head towards freedom. It's not my mother, it's not my father, it's not my culture, it's not my country, it's not my society. It's me, because I am the only one allowed to give myself that permission. But everybody else seeks it from elsewhere. So if you give yourself the permission and say, do this, go out there, be wild, be curious, you're unlocking that lock, and then you're free. You set yourself free. This is where everything goes wrong.
We're enslaved in our minds, ultimately. And then that enslavement mindset reverberates outwards. I saw this video one time of this teacher, and she was talking to her class. And she said, whoever controls your mind controls your time. Whoever controls your mind controls your time. Whoever controls your time controls your mind. So think about it. Who's controlling your mind? Who's controlling your time? Is it your job? Is it the 80-hour work week? It's because up here, you're not free. Up here, you're enslaved. I remember being a nurse and being so miserable and being so afraid to step out of my comfort zone, my security bubble, to explore something else because I didn't know how I was going to pay my bills. But I knew I was trapped. I was mentally trapped, which kept me physically trapped. So it wasn't until mentally I was able to let go of that need for security that was overpowering my need for well-being. It was only then that I was able to see that what I was so afraid of on the other side, the unknown, was nothing to fear in the first place. And so it's really our minds that keep us trapped. It keeps us small. It keeps us safe, confined in these roles that we're playing. And there's no time to explore. And we spend our entire life working for the system because we don't know how it works. We don't know how to make choices that cultivate peace and solitude. We're too wrapped up in our addictions to social media, our addictions to escapism, escaping the enslavement in our free time, alcohol, relationships, travel, vaping. I mean, the list goes on. It's like, how do I have the time, energy, and attention outside of my slave work to explore and focus on these things? It makes sense. Let's keep going.
What is freedom to you?
From the time I was really small, I've had this bizarre obsession with, it started out as a different question. It was kind of like, what's true? What's truth? What is the truth? Like, because I'm not buying this. I don't know what this is, but I don't like it that much. This little world that we live in, or the stories I'm being told. Or like, I'm not interested. The question shifted over time to like, how do I get free? Because I don't feel free. I feel like I'm bound by societal constructs, by money, by all of these things that make me feel like I don't have choice. Relationships, all of these things where I'm like, I don't feel free. And then I had a realization like, but I'm not free here. And so for me, freedom is freedom from the mental construct, freedom from our own minds, freedom from suffering. When I'm free in here, nothing outside. Freedom for me is being the eye of the storm. No matter what is happening in my external environment, I feel good. I feel safe. I'm at peace. That's freedom.
I know so many people are going to say, how can I feel safe when I can't pay my bills? How can I feel safe when I can't feed my children? And this is the work. You can't fathom it because you're too afraid to experience it. And the thing is we always go to the worst case scenario. We always lean all the way as far as we can go to our fear and flush it out fully from our limited perspective because we can't see it going any other way. We don't really believe that we have help. We don't believe that we're divinely guided and protected and always safe. We feel like we're the doers. We have to work. We have to provide, when in reality, God is our provider. God is our protector. God creates what it is we experience and uses channels to provide love and support. And our jobs are just channels. This income that we receive every month is just a channel. This relationship relationship that we're in is just a channel for God's love. It is not the source. We are not the doers. If you don't know how to do something, where do you start? A lot of times you start looking, but another really effective way that I think we've really stepped out of because it's deemed as weak is to ask for help. And a lot of us don't ask God for help because we don't really believe that we're going to receive an answer or that we're going to receive actual help. So we go on carrying on our backs the entire load, and that shit gets heavy. Ask God to carry some of that with you, for you, take it off of you, and he'll answer one way or another. You just have to be patient and open to receiving an answer that doesn't look like the answer that you want to receive, because it never comes in that way. You ask for more patience and you don't magically become more patient. You're thrusted into a situation that forces you to cultivate patience. Just like you ask for help to step outside of a situation that is disturbing your peace. It doesn't necessarily come the way that you think it's going to. So it's about remaining open and remaining patient for the answer. But ultimately, she's right. How can I feel safe regardless of my circumstances? This is also an abundance practice. How can I feel abundant regardless of what my circumstances are telling me? We have to quit relying on the 3D reality as a determinant of possibilities. The possibilities are infinite. We live in a quantum world where everything is metaphysical at a fine level. And we tend to use our outside world as our gauge for how we should feel. So if my outside world looks like shit, I should feel like shit. And then it's a bounce back instead of being completely blind to what the outside world is telling me, in a sense delusional, and holding the vibration of abundance, of safety, regardless of what the outside world says. And that is how you change your circumstance. It is an inside out game, not an outside in game. Let's keep going.
So that's what freedom is. Damn, everyone really is just focused on themselves. I mean, that's kind of exciting. I almost feel like I'm in a game. So if I don't take myself seriously, no one really is. And I keep thinking there's a right way to act, a correct way to be. But there isn't. There is no correct, and so there is no incorrect. So what am I really afraid of, if not my own judgment? But I'm always just me. So shit, I don't really need to have any opinion of myself.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
We get so wrapped up in the mind that we aren't free. And freedom isn't just one definition that applies to one piece of reality. When we're talking about freedom, we could be talking about any type of construct. And in this case, he's referring to an inner freedom of authenticity, being able to act and conduct myself as I please, and not because it's how I believe I should act or how I believe I should dress or what I believe I should do. But really, ultimately, we're only judging ourselves. It's the fear of judgment, the fear of rejection, the fear of abandonment that keeps us normal, keeps us within the lines, keeps us copycats, keeps us conformed. We're so afraid of what other people say when in all actuality, no one else is paying attention to us. We think that the spotlight is on us, and it's not. Let's keep going.
There's a lot of people who think that freedom is being able to do what you want when you want, but they're wrong. Freedom at its core is non-judgment and non-attachment. These are the two key elements to true freedom and living a life of enlightenment.
So I'm not judging myself and I'm not attached to anything. I'm not judging myself for my external appearance or my behavior, and I'm not attached to any outcome. I'm not attached to my comfort zone. Living in a non-attached, non-judgmental state is true freedom, because it doesn't matter what's happening on the outside. And it doesn't matter what's happening on the outside because it doesn't matter what's happening on the inside, because there is complete peace, because you know who you are. That's that self-realization. You realize that the thoughts that are coming in are just thoughts. You can't touch them. You can't feel them. You can't see them. They come in, they float around, and they leave, and we attach to them. And that is why we suffer. Anything could happen to you. You could become homeless tomorrow. The only reason that it's uncomfortable and that you suffer is because you're attached to what you believe reality is supposed to be like. You're attached to comfort levels. You're attached to safety, the idea of safety, the idea that you have to maintain this physical existence. There's so much attachment, there's so much judgment, and there's so much suffering, and there's so much enslavement. There is no freedom in this. It's interesting stuff.
Did you know that freedom of speech gives anyone on this planet the right to offend you? Oh yeah, it does. Freedom of thought, on the other hand, gives you the option as to whether or not you choose to be offended by them. Being offended is a choice that you make. It's not inflicted on you. It's not imposed on you by anyone or anything. Being offended is a weakness. It's an insidious seed that grows inside of you and disempowers you from the inside out. Remember that the next time you choose to be offended.
We choose our experience in every moment. We choose to be offended. We choose to be uncomfortable because we're attached to our thoughts. Not only do we have freedom of thought, but we also have freedom of letting go of thought. It seems impossible, like how can I let go of my thoughts? It's almost like not even freedom of letting go of thought, but freedom of rising above thought. We don't have to believe every thought that comes in. Somebody cuts you off in traffic. The first thought is, how dare they? And then it spirals into more thoughts within that same vibration. But we don't have to be angry and upset. It's a choice that we make. And in every moment, we're choosing what to attach ourselves to. So we can choose to be free, or we can choose to be enslaved in the mind. It's all in the mind, but it's our choice. That's why we're not a victim. So as chaotic and orderly as this world is, because there's always both, we have a choice on how we choose to experience it. And that is where our freedom lies. And that's pretty much all I got for y'all today. Go ahead and drop a comment below. I would love to hear your thoughts on what you think freedom is, or if any of this resonated with you. And if you haven't already, go ahead and like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who could use a little perspective. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.